Welcome back. In our last few classes, we have seen the basic structure and also the key features of C program, and we have also seen the mostly used header files and library functions. Now, whenever we are writing a program in C language, whether C is a high level language or mid level language, when we write the statements to execute the logic to solve a specific problem, basically those statements are understood by us, the humans, the developers or programmers, but those statements are not understood by a computer or by a machine. So what is done here is, from the language that we are writing in, from that language it is basically translated to a language which is suitable or which can be read or understood by a machine. And the language that a machine understands, that is basically bit stream, or we can say combinations of binary numbers, means combinations of 0 and 1. So in between these two languages, we have the role of a compiler and translator or interpreter. So what a compiler does? A compiler checks the syntax of the program that we have written in a particular language, be it C or whatever. And if it finds that in a program we have maintained all the rules of that particular programming language, then it transforms that particular language to a binary code by the help of translator or interpreter. Now the binary code or the bit stream that has been generated, with that the header files that we have mentioned in the beginning of the program, where the library functions that we have used in our program, their definitions are written. Those header files are linked, and finally then the program becomes executable and we execute the program. Execute means we basically test the program with some specific data or input data, and the logic that we have written inside the program that generates some output or output data. Now throughout the whole process we have basically three types of codes. One is source code, then we have object code, and then we have executable code or executable object code. So in today's class we will learn about all those codes and the compilation and execution process. So let's get started. So first one is source code that I have talked about. Now source code is a set of instructions or commands or statements written by a programmer, that I have said, by using any high level or medium level programming language or assembly language which is not understood by a computer but can be read and understood by a human or a programmer. So basically source code is that code or that program that we write by maintaining all the rules and regulations of a programming language. In our case it is C, and whatever we write we understand what we have written, all the statements and all. So source code, it can be easily modified by us, means by a programmer or coder or developer if it is needed. And we have also seen in our earlier classes that in case of a program that we write, we describe every possible part or logic of the program for better understanding. So in a source code we have comments that are written or that are put by the programmer. Source code is not system specific. So in a system, if we have written a program and if we take that file, that source code, and if we execute in another system, then that will be executed, that will run successfully. So it's not that where we have written the program, the system, we have to execute that program in that system only, otherwise it will not be executable. No, it contains less number of statements than object code. I will talk about object code little later. And the file where we write the program by using C language, the source file, the extension of that file is .c. Now once we have written the program, once we have written the source code, we will now compile the program. And after successful compilation, means once the program that we have written is free of any syntax or semantic errors, then the object code is generated. Now what is object code? Object code is a set or sequence of instructions written in low level language or binary format which is generated from source code after going through compiler or other translator. Object code is not easily understood by humans, as I said, but can be understood and further executed by the computer. Means here the central processing unit of the computer. The object code cannot be modified like source code. So if we have any change of requirement, then we have to modify the source code and then we have to recompile our source code. So accordingly, the object code will be also modified. And as we have seen in our source code, to describe every possible part, we put comments. So that is applicable in case of source code, but that is not applicable in case of object code. Once the object code is generated, we don't find any comments in that code. Object code is system specific, unlike source code. Object code has more number of statements than source code. The file extension for object code is .o. In case of source file, it was .c. Now, once the object code has been generated, then what we do? We link all the header files that we have mentioned in the beginning of the program to use successfully all the library functions that we have mentioned in the execution part of our program. And at the same time, our source code may use another source code also. So what is done here after compilation, the object code of other programs, if we are using any other program, or object code of the header files that we have mentioned in the beginning of our program, those object codes are linked with our main source code. And then finally, another format of the code is generated, and that is called executable object code, which is finally executed with input data. So executable code or executable object code is that object code of source file linked with object codes of other source files and or object code of library files, and that is the executable version of the object code which can be further executed with input data. And the file extension for executable object code is .out. So these are the three types of code: source code, object code, and executable object code, that we should have little bit idea about before we write a complete C program. Now we will understand the compilation and execution process through flowchart, and we already have the idea how to draw a flowchart. So we will start our process. Then what we will do? First is the writing the program. So if it is a new program, then we will write the program from scratch, and we will incorporate the logic that we are using to solve that particular problem. And whenever we are writing a program, definitely we will have some specific requirements. And if the program is an old one, then we will open that program, and maybe we need to edit that program, or we need to change the requirements. So accordingly we will act. Now if it is a new program, then also we can edit the source program or source code if there is any change of requirement, or maybe there is any error. And if it is an old program, then also we can edit the source program. So after writing or after opening the source program or source code, we can always edit that source program. Now once we think that we are done with the writing of the source program, and we have incorporated all the requirements that we wanted to solve that particular problem, then what we will do? We will compile that source program. So compilation, you know what it will do. So after the compilation process is done, it will check whether there is any syntax error or not. If there is syntax error, then what we have to do? There is syntax error means something is wrong with the syntax in our source program. So we have to go back to the source program, and we have to edit according to the errors or message that was generated by the compiler. So we will solve all the errors one by one. And once we are done with those changes, then again we will compile the source program. And if this time there is no syntax error, then what we will do? We will go to the next step. And what is that next step? So we know that automatically after the compilation is done successfully, it will translate the source program which is written by us and which is understood by us to the version which is understood by a machine, a binary format or bit stream. Then that bit stream is actually, that binary format is actually not executable. So what we need to do, we have to, as I said, we have to link all the libraries or all the header files that we need to use in our program, or maybe if other programs or source programs we are using from our main program, so object code of those source programs also we need to link with our main source program. And once that linking is done successfully, then what happens, we get the executable object code. Now once we are ready with our executable object code, we will now execute our program. Execute means basically we will test the logic that we have written in our program, whether that logic is correct or not. As I said, whenever we are writing a program, definitely we have some requirements. Through those requirements we are solving a particular problem. So whether we have captured all those requirements properly and correctly or not, we need to test our program, we need to execute our program. And simply executing will not help us, definitely we have to test our program with some relevant and suitable correct input data. And those input data will actually capture all those, or satisfy all those requirements that we were supposed to capture in the logic that we have written in our program. And once the program will be executed as per the input data that we have used, it will generate some output, and definitely that will be again in the form of some output data. And by verifying those output data, we will come to a conclusion whether it is giving a correct output data as per our requirements that we have captured in our program or not. If we see that all the test scenarios, all the test cases that we have written to execute our program, all are okay, means none of them fails, then we will conclude that the logic in our program is correct. So we will execute our program with some input data, and then we will check whether there is any data error or logical error or not. If suppose there is error, then if it is logic error, then what we will do, we will again go back to our source program and we will correct our logic. And once we have edited the program, then again we have to go through the compilation process. Compilation again will be successfully done, and then we will again execute with our same set of input data. As this time we are saying that our error in the program is logical error and we don't have any error or issue with the input data. Now once that logical error has been addressed successfully, this time definitely the execution of the program should be done successfully and we should get our desired output or desired result. Now if suppose there is no logical error, the logic is correct, but the error is with the input data, the input data is not as per those requirements, then what we have to do, that means we have some data error in our input data and we need to rectify or we need to correct our input data. So we will do that. And once the input data has been corrected, so since this time we have no issue or no error with our program, so we will not edit our program and we will not go through the compilation process again. The executable object code that is ready with us, we will execute from there. So we have corrected the input data and we will execute once again. And this time if the input data is correct, so we will not get any logical or data error. So if it is no, then what will happen, we will produce, or our program will produce some correct output which is as per expectation. And once that is done, we will conclude that okay, our expected output and actual output are same, so the program has been written and compiled and executed successfully. Now we can stop the process. So this is all about the compilation and execution of a C program in brief. I hope this class was meaningful for you. In the next class we will be learning something new. Till then, stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.